Welcome, everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 20th. It's week 7, day 2. Today, we're going to go over um, the DOM, part 1. I believe that yesterday you went over HTML and CSS. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Can anyone just give me just a quick summary of what HTML is and what CSS is, what they do?
HTML gives instructions on how the browser should display, and the CSS is kind of like where you store all your styles.
Very good. That's pretty much it. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you in a second. We'll go to my favorite website of all time, the Pokemon API website. Here we go. If I wanted to see all the HTML, CSS elements on this web page, what do I press? I can go F12 or I can do what?
Click and inspect.
Yeah, right click inspect. Sure. These are called your dev tools. Oh, actually, if you haven't done it already, everyone should be using Chrome. Everyone should be using this browser. I mean, if you want to use Mozilla, that's fine, but use Chrome for right now. For the simple fact that they have dev tools that are pretty nifty, and it's just easier if everyone's using um, the same browser. All right, so these are your dev tools. This is your console log here. These are the elements. This is everything that's in there. Did they show you this yesterday already? I think I might have already shown you this, but it doesn't hurt to look at it again. Did they show you this yesterday?
We touched on it a little bit, I think.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so this is actually everything that's on the page, and you can move it. I kind of actually like mine on the right-hand side. If you go in here on dock side, you can actually move it. I like to keep mine on the right side. So there we go. So that way I can see my web page and I can see everything on there. And you can actually kind of hover over it and it'll highlight exactly what exactly is in there. So I can tell that, look at this, it's highlighted blue. Um, and you can go in here if I wanted to go in here. This is a footer. This is some kind of script. You know that's JavaScript. Anytime you see that, this is an iframe. It's kind of image or video. Here's another big div. Let me see if we can find something interesting here. This is the body. And HTML is broken up into, does anyone know what two big major pieces? Your blank and the body. The body is everything that the user sees, and your header. What does the header have? Did they cover that yesterday? And you can see it right here. Here's the actual HTML right here. And here's your header. Header just has a bunch of metadata that the internet uses to kind of locate web pages. And it has a lot of other stuff that I don't really want to go into, but like screen sizing and localization information, metadata, keywords, um, a bunch of different stuff, accessibility stuff sometimes. So it has a bunch of different things. So here's your header, but the body is everything that the user can see. So if I go into the header, that's where all my big pieces are going to be. Like if I go here, I know that this div contains that image. I can actually probably find that Poke API image, right? I can go in here. I know it has to be in here. And I'm actually just kind of parsing the onion here, trying to figure out where this image is. So I know that this is the Poke API image. So I know if I go into this div right here, and you can actually go Command plus size, and I can make that bigger. You see that? So I know that was kind of hard to see. Let's make it nice and jumbo so we can see this. So here, I can go in here. This is, here we go. And there it is, right? And if I actually open this in a new tab, it's going to be the Pokemon API because this is just a what? Just a what? It's a PNG. That's just an image, right? I can open it and do tab. Look at that. So that's being stored somewhere and they're pulling it into the website. You see that? It's identical. Oh, sorry, Nicole's here. Close. Do you see that? And you can parse down exactly how a website is being implemented. I just showed you that specific image. And here's even the words, right? You can edit it, right? If you want to play a joke on your significant other, go into your like bank account and just add negative 10 million and say your account was hacked, take a screenshot and then send it to them. Like, oh, I owe $10 million. On the flip side of that, you could add $10 million to your bank account, take a screenshot, and then send it, and flex like you're rich. Uh, but again, I'm able to do this because why? Can anyone tell me? I can edit this temporarily, right? But I'm able to do this because all this information is what?
Is it on your machine and not uploading to a
Yeah,
server?
yeah. This is local, right? The request has already been made, and now this is being stored locally, right? So Guillermo is okay, but the minute that I refresh my what they call a client, my client is going to request the information from a server, right? And say, hey, what information is here? And Guillermo Aguilar is okay, is not on that server. So it's going to return a bunch of information that's going to rebuild this DOM, this document object model, so I can see it. And it says RESTful Pokemon API, not Guillermo's okay. Right? You can even, I think it's called color picker. Is it? Color. There you go. Color meter. There you go. This is something that's in Mac, but for Windows, they have it. I can hover over everything. This is for CSS. But this is a cool thing that Mac has, but you can literally download one if you have Windows. You can hover over anything and it'll tell you the specific color in RGB. RGB, right? You see this? This red is 180, 50, 42. And if you wanted to match colors, that's one way you could do it. Right? This is built into the Mac, but again, you could find an online one too. So there you go. So that's how you can kind of look at how a website is built. You can match the colors, you can find the JPEGs, right? You can even find out how they implemented it, right? Is that a div inside of some kind of like inside of kind of some window that's a certain size, right? That no matter how big your screen gets, it's capped at a certain size. You'll get to see that by just filtering, just kind of walking through what they have here, right? And it shows all the style, and it shows how it's being implemented. So there you go. Something super useful. Boom. All right, F12, or you can just go in here, inspect, and these are called your dev tools. And there's a lot more stuff. There's console, there's sources. I can go in here and look at my cookies and what's being stored. I can look at the network traffic. Like anytime I make a request, oh, actually, this is kind of outside the scope of this, but it's good to understand. Like if I refresh this, watch, there's going to be a bunch of calls made to the back end. Anyone know what status code 200 is? We won't get into status codes, but status code 200 means okay. It means that the response was returned properly and there was no error. So there you go. You can go into performance. There's a bunch of other stuff, application memory, like I was telling you, where things are being stored. But there you go, a bunch of useful stuff, your dev tools. Okay, cool. So HTML, kind of the bones of a website, CSS, kind of the styling. And today we're probably going to get into kind of what makes a website function, which is the JavaScript that underpins all the websites on the internet today. So let's get into that right now. So this is the dumb part one. Did they show you the shortcut? Let's create an HTML. Let's actually start from the beginning. I'm sure they probably covered this. Like if I wanted to just create a index.html, did they show you the boilerplate shortcut? Exclamation mark. Actually, I haven't done this in a while. I hope this still works. Exclamation mark tab will give you some boilerplate code here. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, we're gonna figure this out. Is it? Yeah, that's what it is, isn't it? There you go. Yeah. Exclamation mark tab. I was afraid that would say it. And this gives you like kind of like a boilerplate HTML code if you wanted to start off with. And notice this is just stuff that you're going to that the user doesn't see that might be important to the website. Here, send you device width, viewport. This is document. This is actually the name, and I'll show you this. I'll show you this right now, actually. This is that, when you have a million tabs and the name or the title at the tab, that's what this is, the title, right? So the head can't see, but the user can see this, right? So I can just do H1 and it's just like a header tag. I can say, hey, you, and it's literally just a string, right? Did they teach you live server? Yes. I can right click, open live server, and I can open this website. There's my website locally right there. Yeah. And even on my makeshift website, I can go inspect and, oops, sorry. I can go elements and look at that. I can inspect my own website because it's the same. I mean, it has far fewer things in it, right? Because I just created it and it's just a boilerplate. But look, I can see the hey you. And this acts no different, actually. Right? You see that? It acts no different than a regular website, right? Because I'm loading it locally. And here I have everything. And it really just has an H1. Yeah. So exclamation mark tab will give you some boilerplate to start off with. Cool. All right. So JavaScript is a programming language of the web. You can update and change both HTML and CSS of your web page with JavaScript. It can also perform calculations and manipulate and validate data. For example, when you enter your name into a form, JavaScript will be running code in the background to validate that form, right? So HTML, just kind of the bones of a website, CSS, kind of the style, and JavaScript, everything that's action related, it's going to be handled by JavaScript. Okay, so using JavaScript to select HTML tags. In the HTML file, we can use a script element to use your JavaScript file within a web page. You can either put your script within the header element, where the title element is located, right? Or at the end of the body, right? And include a source attribute. And put it equal to the location of your JavaScript file in relation to the index.js file. So this is actually just that boilerplate HTML that I created. So let's steal this. So they tell you that you can put your JavaScript in the header or at the bottom. Let's try both. Let's try both. This is your header. So let's do that. This is mine. So let's put it, it said right at the bottom, right, of your header. Here's my header. Let's go ahead and add this. It says app.js. Okay. And it's in relation to this file. So this is telling me that, hey, I have a file called app.js, right? Now, how do I check if I've actually implemented this correctly? Simple. Just go to your app.js and do console log. Correct. Right. And how can I check it here? I can check it right there. Look at that. That tells me that, hey, this HTML, this hey you HTML is connected to my JavaScript because I just console log correct. And you can see it in the console log. You see that? It could be anything, right? It just says that, hey, it's linked properly. Yeah. So that's how you connect your HTML to JavaScript. You can add it at the top, or you can add it at the bottom of the body, which I think that's what the document's about to get to. Or you can add it just like, you can add it at the end. I prefer, I'm not going to get into it right now, but I prefer always add it at the end. You can add it there, or it can be the very last line right before your body. You can put it right there as well. I won't get into it right now unless the actual lesson does, but always put it at the end. You're going to have more consistent performance. But both of those are valid. And if I refresh this, you can see it doesn't change anything, right? Still works. So I could have put it in right in front, right before my title in the header element, or right at the end, right before the last body tag. Both of those are acceptable. Yes? Remember, source is your path. So if I had a docs folder and I had app.js in there, right? And I refresh this, now I have an error. Why is that? It's not picking up my JavaScript. Why?
Because you haven't added the doc folder to that path.
Yeah, docs, app.js. Now it works. Right? Remember, this is your path, the source, SRC. Yeah. So far, we just did an overview over HTML, CSS, and how to link a JavaScript file to your HTML file. So there you go. Okay, so create an index HTML file and copy the below code. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, but I already created one. So you can go ahead and follow along. I'm literally just going to copy paste this. There you go. Let's read this here. It says, so this I'm actually just going to change to docs. I don't want to move it again. Cool. All right, so this header, just a bunch of metadata, but I already connected my JavaScript. That's what this is, right? Then here I have an H1 that says title basic DOM manipulation. I have an H2 tag that says with JavaScript, and then I have an alert button that says alert me. Cool. So if I go back here, I have, there you go, the H1, basic DOM manipulation, an H2, slightly smaller, right? And then an alert me button. Yes? So there you go. Cool. Here I have the football thing, but I can get rid of this. I know it works. It's connected properly. I can remove it. Don't need it. Awesome. All right. So to see your web page in the browser, I already told you this. Use Live Server, and it's an extension. If you don't know how to, you just go in here and type in Live Server. And it's this one right here, the one with the purple. And just install that. I don't have an install button here because I already have it installed, but pretty straightforward. Cool. So if you don't have it installed, this will start a local development running on port 5500. And if it works, you'll see this right here. Boom. And actually, let's look at my web page. Let's look at my web page, and this doesn't have a title. Let me add a title. Title tab. You can type title tab. You say, hey, this is my title. Remember I told you when you have like a million tabs and you have like some writing at the tab? That's what this is. How's that not working? No, why is that not working? I'll come back to it. That should be the title here. How did that work? Let me look back up here. Let's try this. Let me try this. Copy, exclamation mark tab. I'm just going to start from the boilerplate. Yeah, that was right. I don't know why that doesn't work. Let me see. You see how this says document? That's what should happen. And that's just the title right there, the header. So that's, see document here? And this can be anything. This can be any title. Any title. That's what I was looking for. See that? Any title. But for right now, we'll just stick to the lesson. Just wanted to show you that. Boom. All right, cool. So we're back to this. We open with live server. Since you only have an HTML, the page doesn't do anything, right? Even when I click on the little button, doesn't do anything, right? All right, so now we're going to learn how do we just connect all these pieces. Okay, we have a little bit of writing on our web page, right? We don't have any styling, that's okay, but I imagine they're going to want us to do something when we press that button because that's how a real web page works. All right, so do anything based on our user actions. So we're going to need some JavaScript. Create an app.js, which we already have, right? Here it is. And it says, hey, JavaScript loaded. We already showed you that with football and the other string that I console logged, right? But just so you see it again, there you go. And this tells us, hey, it's loaded. Boom. All right, so logging is great for debugging, but users won't find that very interesting. In order to do anything useful, you need to go through a routine. So this is kind of how you're going to add this JavaScript logic to your HTML. You're going to grab the HTML element, you're going to attach an event listener to it, and you're going to write a function to execute when that event happens, right? So here, this is what we're going to do. We're going to grab an HTML element. There are many different ways to do basically the same thing, but for now, we'll just do one method. We'll use this keyword called query selector, and it's a method on the document object model, right? So in app.js, we're going to do this right here. This. So how this reads is, hey, this is just a const. They call it btn. And you're going to go into the document object model. You are going to select the HTML button, right? And then you're going to console log it. That's what this is, right? So there you go. And notice there's only one button. This is going to become important later. There's only one button in the body of my HTML. So here we go. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to click alert me. It doesn't do anything. But what do you notice here? What am I console logging here? Just a button, right? Let's look at our JavaScript. Just console logging a button, right? And it tells you exactly what it's doing. Hey, I'm grabbing a button element with the ID alert button. And if you look at HTML, I do have a button with the ID alert button that says alert me. That just shows you, hey, I'm grabbing something from the HTML, from the DOM. Now that we've grabbed something, we can make it do stuff. So you should see something like this, which we do. All right, so the document query selector method takes a string. Here's a quick cheat sheet you might find useful, right? So the parameter, this says, hey, go to the DOM and select the H2. This says, hey, go to the DOM and select the class title. Notice the period before title. That signifies when I look at JavaScript and I see a dot title, that tells me that, hey, it's going to be in some HTML element that has a class title. And this is very, very similar for ID, except it's the I always want to call it the pound sign, right? But it's a sharp symbol. Sharp alert button, that tells me it's an ID. Right? And we're going to get into why this is important here in a second, right? And here it tells you what it does. It gets referenced the first H2 element in the document. So this is really important. What happens if you have 10 H2s in the document and you grab something by H2? Is it going to grab all of them? No, it's only going to grab the first one top to bottom, right? So that's important. Keep that in mind, right? Now, if you have a class with title, right, gets the reference to the first element with a class title, right? And same thing with this one, except this with ID. So you're grabbing elements of the HTML with your JavaScript. So now we're going to do something called attach an event listener, right? Once you got the HTML element, you need to attach an event listener. An event listener is going to do what? Listen for an event to happen. And if that event happens, it's going to trigger something. It's going to run some code, right? So here's the code right here. Const btn document, grab the button, add an event listener, and the event listener is click. And if that button hears a click on itself, on button, it's going to run this. What's this? Can anyone tell me?
fat arrow function?
Yeah. It's just an anonymous function. So let's do that. So here on that button click, this is just an anonymous function, right? It doesn't do anything. But I can, to help me out, I can say button click, right? Okay, let's see what happens here. Okay, I refresh the page, we're good, right? So based on this code on the left, right, it's grabbing the button, it's adding an event listener, and the event listener is listening for a click. On that click, right, it's gonna run this specific function, right? So if I click alert me, what happened? A console log button click. Now here, doesn't really matter, right? It's a console log statement, but this shows you, hey, all of a sudden I can add action to elements of my HTML. And that's more or less, in a really oversimplified way, how websites work. Yes?
Yeah.
So there you go, button click. All right, the first way requires you to pass a string of the event you want to listen to. In this case, is a click. So here I showed you it's a click, but you can have, there's a bunch of different ones. You can go into the MDN. Anything web related, you can go to the MDN, source of all truth, web documents, and you can search for anything that's web related. I can go into just DOM. There you go. Let's look at the document object model, and it's going to tell you everything you ever need to know about the DOM. Domain name, DOM, documentation, element. It's kind of like the encyclopedia and how the internet works. Make sense? So this is the source of truth for anything internet JavaScript related. So there you go. All right, so this specifically runs this anonymous function. An anonymous function is just a function that doesn't have a name, right? It doesn't need a name because it's actually attached to this button, right? And the minute that you click it, it's going to execute. All right, so the function that you pass will be executed whenever an event occurs. Like I just gave you click, but have you ever been to a website when you hover over something and it changes color? That's on hover. Right. And there's other ones where like you hover out of a space, it changes color. That's also a different event that they're listening for. Right. Let's go to, oh, here we go. See if I can find something here. I haven't tried this. On hover, check if this will give us anything. On hover. There you go. You can have, there's a lot of transitions, right? There's an on hover. On focus, right? Oh, you probably ever gone to a website and you hover over like a button and it gets bigger. That's all actions that are built in, and you can use those. But on click is obviously the most popular one because it's really useful. But it's not the only one. It's on hover out, on a bunch of different ones. So that's just one example. So here we go. The function that you pass in will be executed whenever the event hovers. Most of the time it's going to be a click, but not necessarily. It can be on hover, for example. The callback function takes a parameter, which the event occurrence. And this is just an example. This is this is just a parameter, right? That's being passed into the function. I can copy this and we can show what this looks like. This is really not that any different from what I did earlier. So let's go to the web page. Right, refresh. And then when I hit the alert me, right, this tells you that some kind of event happened, right? And it gives you a bunch of metadata on this event, right? E is short for event, right? And it's just passed into my function, right? I did the console log because that's much easier to understand than some event with a bunch of metadata that doesn't mean anything to you. Yeah. So that's what this is. Cool. Now, if you click the button, you should see the event object. There's a whole bunch of stuff on it. Typically, you only care about the target property, right? So let's do that. Let's go see target here. This is typically, or value are the two most common ones you're going to use. I refresh, I hit the alert me, right? And the target here is just this button with this alert me string on it. And you can tell that's what it is because here it is, line 15. Alert button and this string alert me. And that's what you see when you get e-target. Let's say you ultimately want to change a button's text when a user clicks it. Let's do that. So here, I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to paste it. And notice I'm just manipulating the function. So this code is all the same, right? Const btn document query selector button, grab the button, right? On the button click, that's what this says. On the button click, right? You are going to console log the target, right? But you're also going to change the value of the inner text of target to what? To click, right? So let's see if that happens. I'm gonna refresh. I refresh a lot. I don't think you necessarily have to refresh that many times. I think it auto refreshes, but I'm like paranoid. All right, so when I press this and I hit alert me, right? What did you notice happened? The string is not alert me anymore. It's what?
It's clicked.
Yeah, it's clicked. It's on the button click. I did the swap here. And it could be anything, right? Okay. There you go. Alert me anymore. Not alert me anymore. There you go. Because that's what it was initially, right? I can see that. It says alert me on line 15. But on the button click, I effectively changed it, right? This is known as a dynamic change. On the button click, something dynamic, right? Swapped out something. Make sense? Right? You ever go to a website and they're asking for your email, right? And you press submit. That's a form, right? That on the button click is grabbing all your information, it's packaging it into a nice little JSON object and sending it to the backend somewhere for storage, right? Not even for storage. A lot of times they're selling that data. That's how you end up on those like long text threads when people try to sell you something or tell you that your car warranty is expired and you need to call them immediately so they can shake you down. That's how that happens. Actually, the whole thing is kind of a recent phenomenon where people's information, right, is valuable. Not only for like stealing credit cards and stuff, but tracking human behavior and like advertising, right? You ever talk about like Burger King to your friends or whatever fancy establishment you go to, and then you check your social media and you get a Burger King advertisement? What a coincidence. Anyway, so there you go. E-target, this is dynamic change right there. Now click the button and see what happens. You don't always need, so this is important right here. You don't always need the event itself, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. For example, if you want to annoy your site's visitors, you could give them a pop-up. So let's try this. Yep. Boom, 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 boom. So here, same thing. Let's walk through it. Hey, grab a button, right? On click, I want you to alert hello code platoon, right? So what am I going to get on that button click?
Gonna get another pop-up on the screen that I don't know from there. Well, you're in the browser. Yeah, you should get a pop-up.
Yeah, let's see. There you go. And they were nice, right? You have an okay to click out. You could probably eliminate that or modify somehow to a point where the pop-up doesn't go away. And you're forced to like close down your browser and open it back up again. Who would do that? No one, but you could. So there you go. Alert me. There you go. That's an action. Questions about this so far?
Yeah.
Simple? Okay. How do I attach a CSS to this website? Do you guys remember? Walk me through it.
You want to add go to the HTML page,
Uh-huh.
and then just below title,
Yep.
you can add open angle bracket, link source,
What's the tag? Link?
link, yes.
Okay. So here I can type link,
Hmm. And
tab.
you can, yeah.
It creates it for me.
Hmm.
Okay. So what's href?
Href is the location where the CSS file resides.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. How can I tell that I did that right?
You can go back to your index.css and then do a dot title and just change the title to a color or background or whatever
Dot title. Where are you getting that from? Dot title.
from
Oh,
your
okay.
class right
Your
there. Yeah.
H1. There you
Hmm.
go. But I could easily just do H1, right? Since I don't have anything.
Yeah, that
So
too.
H1, curly braces, color, frame, semicolon. Dude, I can't remember the last time there you go.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I think this is how you do it. There's some built-in colors, but again, let's bust out color picker. Color, I keep calling it color picker, but it's not color picker. You could easily do the numbers, right? Um, there's some built-in colors, green,
Mhm.
red is one, magenta maybe, yeah, magenta, but you could also easily do RGB and pass in, I don't know, 244. I don't know what color this is, 56. RGB actually takes four, and the last one's actually transparency, I believe. There you go. I guess that's red. There you go. Right.
And you can click on that color swatch as well, Arturo. I mean Guillermo. No.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, you could. Anyway, just show you. There you go. Now I know it's connected properly because I just manipulated it a little bit. Cool. Boom, 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 boom. Uh, MDN, source of all. All right. So there you go. Let's try to exercise real quick. Try before we get to the real exercise, see if you can do this. See if you can figure this out. This is your assignment, and after this, we'll come back. Actually, I'm not even going to break you up into groups. Let's see if we can figure out right now. I will pause the recording now. Um, write the function. Write the function that changes basic DOM manipulation to color on button click. Go do that. Pretty straightforward. On button click, I want this to change it to any color that's not black. Give it a shot. I'm going to pause here. Pause recording. All right, how do we do?
Did pretty good.
Cisco got it? Anyone else? That's okay. Where did we get stuck? Everyone, where did we get stuck? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I was just going from the top and just rebuilding everything you showed. So I didn't get to it just quite yet.
No worries. Didn't get to it. Anyone else get stuck somewhere? Grabbing the element maybe? Cisco, can you share your screen? Can you walk us through your solution?
Yeah. 1 second here. Um, you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yeah, I just sorry, my throat is really hoarse. I just added a where's that? Lost my space. Yeah, I took it away. I'm sorry. I had it up here. So I just added created a variable with const h1 element, and then I reached into the DOM and with the query selector using document query selector h1, and then I brought it down here into the button click anonymous function that you had, and added the h1 element dot style dot color equals blue, and when you click it, it changes accordingly. So that's pretty much it.
There you go. That was it. Look at line 2 right there. He grabs the DOM element right there. He grabs it by H1. Okay, cool. Then look at line 12. He says, hey, now that I have this DOM element, go into property style, go into color, change it to green on button click. Right? This is a very simple like change color, but that could have been anything. That could have been like delete everything on the page. It could have been style with JavaScript in italics, change font, submit form, close tab. It can be any action. This just happens to be change color. But all the rest of them are the same, right? You pass the whatever function, you grab whatever element, then you do X, right? Thank you, Cisco. Let's go over one thing and then we can stop for break here. Just kind of reinforce this concept. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So notice how my DOM is red, and it's red because if you look at my CSS, I changed it to red, right? But when we go to this, you're going to notice I did literally the exact same thing. Hey, button, grab button, right? Add an event listener. But here, I went into the document object model query selector. I grabbed it by class dot title. I know that that's a class because it says it right here. And that's the syntax to grab it, right? And then I did the exact same thing, change the green. So when you refresh here and you hit alert me, it's going to override the red. And it's going to change it to green. Now, when I refresh, it goes back to red because that's how it's styled, right? It resets what they call the state to its default original code. Something really important to notice here is this is just an anonymous function, but it doesn't have to be anonymous. And this is what you saw in Cisco's, right? I can copy this and I can call it turn green, right? And I can proceed to have whatever kind of function you want to write. Turn green. And I'm going to do, I'm trying to think of like the weirdest way I could write this. I could do something like this. Okay, this is not working. What's the right syntax here? I want to create an arrow function.
Does the arrow come first before the equals?
What am I missing? Param, right? But notice this. This is really not any different. I made some little arrow function. I'm still grabbing the same title. I'm still turning it green. And on button click, run the function turn green. Let's refresh this. I'm getting an error here. What error am I getting here?
It's not initialized.
What does that mean? It tells you what the error is right there. What do I have to do to fix this? Code is read from top to bottom. So what's my issue here?
Does it need to be above the button?
Yeah. Look at line 3. I'm executing turn green. It hasn't been defined yet, right? You can go up here and you can go option down arrow and bring it down. Now I run this, notice no more error, right? But this doesn't run any differently, right? On button click, run the function turn green. It can be an anonymous function, but it doesn't have to be. It being an anonymous function does make it more compact, but it makes it less reusable. And that's ultimately, depending on what you're writing, a design decision, right? Where I have turn green, I can import this into multiple files and use it, especially if the styling is similar. And that's what's happening. My favorite is like dominoes.com. I love this website because it's like very consistent on every tab, right? They were using a lot of the same code. Go to locations, it's got the same design, allow always. It's pretty straightforward. These are just boxes. This is pulling my IP probably. And yes, I'm in Austin, Texas, but if I had my VPN and I put somewhere in like Nantucket or something, it pulled up Massachusetts instead, right? Cart, start order. There's a lot of reusing of their code going on. Gluten-free warning. Notice how the design is the same, right? This is some kind of, let's find this. Inspect. This is some kind of video, right? So I can go into the body and I can try to find this. What are they using here? So it's in here. Notice the blue. Fact page, still in this div. Looks like it's in here. Yep. Look at it. It's a div, and look at the class. YouTube container. What kind of video is that? You're using iframe to implement this, right? And the title is Domino's gluten-free crust, right? And it has a max width, max height, and the source, it's just embedded. Look at that from YouTube. It's just an embedding a YouTube video. There you go. That's it. Make sense? Just showing you what's possible here and how people are doing this. You could easily do that too. And heck, we might do a challenge about embedding your favorite YouTube video into a web page. They did it here. It's pretty straightforward. Right? All right. Dope. Dope. Let's go back to the lesson. Okay. Challenges. Let's look at DOM manipulation, replace images. This is a walkthrough tutorial exercise from Eloquent JavaScript. If you remember Eloquent JavaScript in the pre-work, the first couple of chapters are part of the pre-work. If you haven't read it, totally okay. But definitely read this, and we're going to go over replacing images. You will improve your skills at manipulating the DOM and using DOM events to execute your JS code when a button is clicked. Not only when this button is clicked, if you already mastered when a button is clicked, do on hover in or hover out or a variation of that. Review the tutorial in the link above before doing this walkthrough at the same time. This is a very practical exercise. You will learn about images and alt attributes, which is used in the browser, is enabled to download their desired image you will learn about IMG, which is image, elements, the alt attribute. The alt attribute, I just give it to you now. It's just a string that shows up when an image is not available, right? It's an accessibility feature, which is used when the browser is unable to download a desired image or for accessibility purposes, right? So you're going to go through this exercise. It's pretty straightforward. If we complete this, I actually have a much harder challenge for you that involves DOM manipulation. Questions about this so far? All right, so this is pretty straightforward. If you finish this early, I would see if you can replace images on button clicks. Here's a slightly more challenging uh, uh, kind of stretch goal. See if you can randomize the image from a set of 10 or a set of 5. Then on every button click, it's just a function that randomizes Pokemon images. It randomizes anything you can think of. Make sense? If you want to get fancy, you could randomize YouTube videos that play. That involves a slightly different implementation. You're going to need iframe or whatever the new version for HTML5 is. I'm pretty sure still iframe, I think. But that's going to be a slightly different implementation. The idea and the logic is the same, right? But the HTML element that you use is different, right? Because a video is not an image. A string is not an image. Make sense? All right, so this is replace images, DOM manipulation, stretch goal, see if you can randomize it. Stretch goal, see if you use videos instead. Questions? I'll stop here. Questions about this challenge? No? I'll give you a project that I worked on for AWS to show you. This is just you're replacing a stupid Pokemon image. How does this matter? You're changing the color of the font. How does this matter? Well, this is the precursors to doing real paid work as a dev, right? I'll show you really the only front end project I was ever on, and that's because I didn't have enough front end engineers, and I knew a little bit of front end, so I ended up on this project. And what will happen if you end up as a front end engineer and you end up on a really big project, right? They will have really fancy Figma designs of what it's supposed to look like, right? And they'll tell you, hey, this form's supposed to look like this. And your job using the libraries that are approved by your company, right? And all the internal tuning that you have, right? You're going to try to replicate those images. And the HTML and the CSS, all that stuff is pretty straightforward. And that's what you're learning here, right? But eventually you start getting into really complicated things, right? The front ends do, the front end devs sometimes do, right? Things like localization, right? What is localization? You ever travel somewhere? Let's say you travel to Mexico and you go to the webpage and it's in Spanish. So the internet knows you're in Mexico and it's going to give it to you in their native language, which is Spanish, right? But think of ESPN. ESPN is an American company. Okay, so what's happening here? All the content is being localized and not just in Spanish, right? In Portuguese, in French, in Mandarin, in Japanese, right? So quick change of color and change of images are easy, right? But ultimately you build up to really challenging things saying, hey, our website is going to support 15 languages, right? And it's going to be accessible to the hearing impaired and to the visually impaired. And it's going to have a lot of built-in functionality that if you hover, right, Mac or Windows knows to read it out loud and say, ESPN soccer, American football, whatever the case may be, as you hover over the dropdown, right? And you get into like really complicated things like that, right? So yes, this is a little silly, but it gets your feet wet manipulating the DOM. And I just gave you a real example of how this is implemented in a real life business, right? We have this money-making application, right? We want it to make it accessible to as many people as possible. So we can, a lot of the times for big businesses, monetize it, right? My favorite example, I actually am not a fan of his, but I'll go ahead and bring it up because it's a really good example of this. Does anyone know who Mr. Beast is? He's like the biggest YouTuber in the world, right? And he was on a podcast once and they asked him about reaching as many people as he possibly could. And he said one of the simple things that his company did was they just dubbed all their videos in like every language that they could possibly get, right? And that already increased the views of every video by tens of millions. Well, he was able to monetize that, So it's cool to be accessible to different parts of the world, but they weren't really thinking about helping people out that didn't speak English. They were thinking of like, hey, how can we get more eyes on these YouTube videos so we can make more money, right? And that's a great example of that, right? And then he's in another video when he's talking with Zuckerberg and he says, hey, when I upload a YouTube video, I can just upload a file with 15 translations, right? And it works. So I can reach as many people as possible. And he got into it with Zuckerberg saying, hey, why isn't that easy on Facebook? If YouTube has it, Facebook should have it, right? That's an implementation their team doesn't have, right? So that makes people like Mr. Beast want to be content creators for YouTube. You make it easier to reach a lot of people, right? As opposed to uploading video to YouTube and you can only reach maybe a fraction of that, right? Make sense? And when it's your pocketbook, obviously you care. Those are just real world examples of kind of ultimately when you get to the job, the problems you're going to be solving. Make sense? And maybe your company, doesn't put out videos that get, 50 million views, right? But even if they only get 100,000 of views or a million views, right? That's going to matter to them. Go ahead, Art. Sorry.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, when you load up that many languages, it's probably looking at your IP address and designating a language. But if you're using a VPN, you might get, well, if you're in the Netherlands, you might get some strange language going out, right?
Yeah, exactly. But if you see if it's a good website and it has a good UI, it should have a drop down where you can change it and override the default IP location, right? Maybe you are, yeah. And I was in China not too long ago, in Japan. Everything was coming up in those languages. I don't speak them, so you're gonna have to turn that into English for me. Make sense? Okay, so what you're doing now is really just a precursor for real dev work and eventually things you'll have to do, right? Make sense? Alrighty. I've gone an hour. Go ahead and take like a 10 or 15-minute break. I'm gonna open the breakout rooms. And I'm probably going to give you 30, 35, well, probably like 40 minutes to work on this exercise. We're going to come back and look over it, right? And hopefully we're closer to done than not. And then I'll give you a slightly more challenging assignment. Make sense? All right. Take a break. I'll open. All right.
Yeah.
How do we do?
Did good.
How far did you get, Cisco?
Well, I think I got it all done. Yeah, I mean, I can show you.
Show us.
See what we got going on here. So let me move this to this screen. Okay. Desktop 2. Yeah. So let me close this here. So for the HTML, I just kind of went off the tutorial example for the most part, and I just added my own images and whatnot to it, and then changed some things around. But yeah, I added an image folder over here where I placed 3 images of me looking, smiling, and winking. And then I, of course, use the image tags and their locations to place them in the HTML. Then I used the button click, added the script.js to the HTML file. And over here, I was actually just, I was adding the reverse of it to flip it back. But anyway, yeah, so over here, just basically went off the tutorial. Didn't really have to change that at all. But once all that was done.
Why'd you go in reverse?
Oh, well, I was gonna go and reverse, and when you flip it, I was gonna make it so when you click it again, it'll go back to the original way that it was here.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain why you went in reverse.
With which let's see.
In your loop.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, the document that get element by tag name when you place them all here within this image variable, it when it loads up, it's going to basically go, it's gonna load them all up and it'll end at the very last image, right? So therefore, when you want to loop through it, you actually are looping in reverse to actually have the images.
Let's go. What you said didn't make any sense at all.
No, it didn't.
No, I didn't. I just
Okay.
asked you because I thought it was interesting. It
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
matter if you loop forward or backward. I just thought it was interesting that you loop backward, and I thought you had some high speed reason for it.
Oh,
Turns
well,
out you don't. It's okay.
that's
Keep going.
that's what
It
I
doesn't
was
matter at
reading.
all. It doesn't matter at all.
Okay. Yeah, that's what so when I read the tutorial, I noticed it said I thought it mentioned something to that effect that it, when you put them all within the when you put them all together and have to loop through them with the for loop, that's kind of the
Mhm.
way it the JS, the script actually, when you load the file itself, when you load the HTML page, it gets all the images, but it'll load them in reverse of the way it was placed in, or it
Okay.
parsed the HTML page here. So, but yeah. So and then of course I added I added the little hover effect with the replace button over here. So
Oh yeah, do that again. That's good.
yeah.
So notice line 19 on hover. Notice it changes color, right? It's blue and then it goes to black. There you go.
That's it.
All right, what's something that line 19 probably shouldn't do? What is line 19 doing right there in the CSS file? It's affecting what?
This here.
Yeah.
So so I have a button class that I added.
Yeah, I know what it is, but is it
Mhm.
supposed to do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of. Kind
Uh,
of. Well,
so
let's talk
so
about this.
are you talking about maybe doing that, the two dots instead? The
No,
two?
no, it's
Oh,
fine. I'll go into it. Maybe it wasn't covered yesterday. I'll
okay,
go into it.
okay.
Show us the clicking one more time, Cisco,
The
on your
clicking.
web page.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let me save this right quick. So yeah.
And you were working on the reverse, right?
Yeah, I was working on the reverse to flip this back, and I was going to change, I was going to do uh reset, here. I was going to have a reset that, takes it back to the original pictures in place of the alt text.
Okay, how would you do that in one sentence?
Now you're putting me on the spot. uh, I don't know right offhand. I don't
Anyone?
know right.
Because I'm about to ask you to do exactly that. So notice that you have replace and it goes into the alt text, but you don't have a way to go back.
Mhm.
So you would need just kind of some kind of conditional logic, right? Something like if alt text is shown, right? Reverse the
Mhm.
action of the button. So it's just a simple if else. It's a Boolean, right?
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. And that's kind of how I was getting ready to
There you
try
go.
to,
Right there on
yeah.
line 11. So that's gonna be something that I ask you to do here in a second. Good, Cisco. Thank you.
Mhm.
Let me show you something briefly here. Then we can kind of move on. Uh, let's do test.html. Let me share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to just do an H1 here. low. And let me do H4. Hey. And I just open it in a live server. What do you notice here about my HTML on test.html? What do you notice here about the style?
Oh, you got a different font family you're using, and yeah, and then
No, they're both the same font family. There's no CSS attached to it, but what do you notice here?
oh, they're different, just different sizes.
Yeah, they're different sizes. Is it supposed to do that?
Yep.
No, it's not supposed to do that. So that begs the question, if it's not supposed to do that, why does it do it? This is kind of a long history, but what I'm about to teach you is actually really important. It's not supposed to style. Where's your style come in a web page?
Style sheet.
Yeah, CSS.
Mhm.
So should HTML have any style embedded with it?
Oh no, no, it should not.
No, it shouldn't. That's known as separation of concerns, right? The style should only come from CSS, right? The
Mhm.
string element should only come from HTML. The logic should only come from JavaScript. And you notice it a little bit in your files. Let's go to hover, right? That's logic. Am I hovering over the button? Am I not?
Mhm.
Change color, right? It's not
Mhm.
supposed to do that. Why
Okay.
is that? Because it became, I'm going to get into the reason why it happened, but it's not supposed to do that. For the simple fact that if you look at a web page and you say, "Hey, I don't want this button to be yellow. I want it to be green," what
Mhm.
file are you going to go to?
The CSS file.
The CSS. You know exactly where to go,
Mhm.
right? Hey, this button click isn't working. Where am I going to go?
You're gonna go to the script.js
Yeah,
file.
the JavaScript file.
Mhm.
Hey, I don't want this to say Pokemon API. I want this to say, Super Pokemon API. Where am I going to go? HTML, right? That's the whole concept behind separation of concerns. And when you start blurring the lines, it makes it really hard to maintain code, right?
Mm.
So why does this happen? You see this is H1 and H4. The browser is actually adding that styling, and it's not supposed to. It kind of goes back to like the browser wars from like the Netscape days, and then Chrome and Mozilla, and then them kind of jockeying for position in marketplace and editing or giving default formatting to the files. It's not technically supposed to do this, but this is old legacy code that's still built into the browser. Because your browser, right? When I click on Chrome, it's just an application like anything else, right?
Mhm.
Right. So technically, it's not supposed to do that, but we see that it does. You can actually, we can look into it. Go into the CSS and you can default the formatting of your HTML page, and that way, if you do that, I forget what the command is. Although you put it at the top of your page, and then this will go back to being the exact same size, the exact same style, and your test HTML, regardless if it's in H1 or in H4, because the styling doesn't belong here.
I get what you're getting at. Yeah.
Make sense? Eventually,
Mhm.
you're going to get into like frameworks and like Bootstrap and Material UI that kind of blur those lines a little bit. But we'll get into that later. But just know that the principle of it is really important. This idea of separation of concerns, right? The HTML is with HTML, the styling is with CSS, right? That action and functionality is with JavaScript. Pretty common front end dev question too, actually. Explain to me what separation of concerns is. Go ahead, Art.
I just wanted to ask you if it was also another example about this separation of concerns is when we included a button, but we didn't give any type of size parameters or anything, but we had parameters. So that was probably the browser putting in
Yeah,
some.
default formatting. Yeah, happens. Just old legacy code that's just there. But again, you can reset the settings with CSS. I just forget what the command is. Just keep that in mind. Just conceptually is something for you to understand as a dev. Okay, cool. All right, the rest of you, where did we get stuck? I can stop sharing my screen now.
I was actually spinning through that document that was attached, and I was there for longer than expected.
Okay, that's fine. Where else, guys?
Yeah, same here. So I'm still on the setup.
Joe, Nicole, go
I
ahead.
was getting through it, but I was almost there. Almost there. I just had to put the app.js together. I just didn't get to it.
Okay,
Setup as well.
alrighty. So here we go. I'm going to give you a couple other challenges, and I'll go ahead and write them down in my test.js file here, but I'll also put them in the hotel questions. That way you have an idea of kind of what I'm asking you to do, because I'm able to throw a lot at you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the index HTML that I created just very quickly, and I just did very similar to Cisco, exactly what the challenge is. And I just put everything in pics, and I literally just Googled mountain, pizza, and puppy, right? So they're here. Those are my alt tasks. And you notice that the image are not taking up the entire screen. That's because I edited which file?
CSS.
Yeah, if you look at my CSS, I give it a max width. Hey, don't go bigger than 250 pixels. Height auto, that way it maintains the same aspect ratio of 250 pixels wide. And be however tall you need to be, right? But don't exceed 250 max width. Make sense? So that's where I did it. I did the hover over. Notice it darkens. Same, right? So I have the same issue that Cisco has. I click on replace images, right? It goes into my alt text, but then I can't go back. You see that? All right. So what I'm going to ask you to do is once you finish this, if you haven't finished it, definitely finish this, right? I'm going to ask you to do a couple things. I am going to, and I'll go ahead and write this. The code's not important. I'm just go ahead and write it here. So this is where we're at. If you complete the challenge, you're stuck here, right? You need to revert back to images by clicking the same button. That's one, right? By clicking the same button. Next thing you need to do is add a button that randomizes the images shown, i.e., click button, all images turn to one picture. Whether it's all pizzas, whether it's all puppies, whether it's all mountains, one picture. And it's going to be random, right? So there's a lot of JavaScript logic there, right? And the last one I'm going to ask you to do, right, is do the same activity with your favorite YouTube videos. Pick 3. If you don't have favorite YouTube videos, that's totally fine. Just pick whatever. Actually, I want this on the record. And I don't remember who this person's name is, but once, a long time ago, and I probably should have recorded this, but it doesn't matter. Someone applied to Code Platoon and their YouTube video was a Rickroll. They Rickrolled us on their application video. I was like, dude, you are so unserious. It ended up never coming, but I just thought that was kind of rude. Anyway, bless your heart, whoever that was. I could probably pull up who that was. Anyway, do the same activity, but pick your favorite videos. Pick 3 YouTube. Here's a hint. You're going to need iframe probably. Use iframe. If I want you to embed YouTube videos, what are you going to need? Instead of the image in your local directory, you're just going to need what?
A link to it.
Yep. Use URL. And if you have time, randomize above as well. So that's kind of actually kind of a lot. Uh, 3, 4. That's what I'm going to ask you to do. Questions about this? Do you want to see some pseudocode for each? Okay. Let's try to do this together though. Revert back to images by clicking the same button. This we were discussing it, right? It's going to be some kind of Boolean checking if alt text is showing on the DOM. If it is, right? If it is, hit else condition of the same function to revert back to images. It's going to be very simple if else, right? With logics to put the image, with logic to switch from images to alt text and then alt text back to image, right? So just one undoes the other. Make sense? You could do this one of two ways. Can anyone think of the two ways you could possibly implement this? You could. How'd you implement putting the alt texts in, Cisco? Use the what? What logic did you use? Use the simple?
For loop.
Yeah. You could loop. There's two ways. You could loop to replace images with alt text and vice versa. Right? What's the second implementation? You could just do what? To undo what you did. Think about this. What's the default? If I refresh my page, what's the default state of this page? Images on or off?
Yeah, they're on. Yeah. So display
So
just display the image.
yeah, but how would I do
Turn-
that though?
Uh, there is a there is a attribute, I think, or a function for the document element to show
You could just
something.
clear the state, right?
Yeah.
Or refresh.
Yeah.
Kind of hacky, but it does kind of work. Because the default state is this, right? Like
Mhm.
if I replace images, I get my output, but if I hit the refresh on that button click, right? I get them back. I mean,
Mhm.
implement this way. This is what I want. You're going to learn more from this, but there's merit to this because sometimes you will use this. You just clear the state, right? So both of those. So that's one. Two, add a button that randomizes the images shown, i.e. click a button and all images turn to one picture. How are we going to go about doing this? You click a button and I want all the images to be a certain picture. And don't code anything, just think about it. How would you do that? So there's two pieces here. You want a button that once you click it, all the pictures are the same,
Mhm.
right? So why don't we create a button that picks the first image in the list and makes all the pictures that one.
Mm.
Once you have that, then just randomize the list on button click and substitute that image, right? So you want to hard code it just to be the first image in that list or that image node.
Mm.
And then why don't you just make it a list, have a little random function from 1 to 3, and then whatever number it rounds up to, pick that one, pick that index, right? There'll be a mountain puppy or pizza or whatever the case may be, whatever images you have on your desktop. Make sense?
Yeah.
And then for 3, do the same activity with your favorite YouTube. This is going to be the same, except you just need to how to figure out how to use iframe, right? And then randomize will be literally the exact same logic as 2, except with videos and not images, i.e. with URLs and not images in your root directory, right? I am going to, give me 1 second, hotel question. There you go. Just sent that over the Slack channel. Any last minute questions before I cut you loose? Sorry, I went a little longer than I had anticipated, but I want to make sure that you had a starting point. Questions about what I'm asking you to do? No questions? All right, I'll jump around in a little bit. I'm gonna take a little break. I'm gonna jump around and see where you guys are at in probably 10, 15. Make sense? All right, I'm gonna pause it here and I'll open the rooms. How's it going, guys? How do we do?
I'm proud to say I made some progress. Didn't
Good.
finish, but these little accomplishments keep me going.
Awesome. Which one did you finish, Art?
Actually, I was still working on problem 1.
Okay,
Just loaded, got my button going, so slowly chipping away at it.
good. How did everyone else do? Cisco, how far did you get, bud?
Well, I got the first one done. I was working on my randomized one now. Yeah, so let's yeah, I'll show you what I got. The
Sure.
randomizer, haven't tested that yet. Let's see here.
It's going to be important because it's going to be the same for the YouTube video.
Yeah. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so let's see. Okay. So I really cheated with the replace images button and function. I just made a status variable, set it to false, and when it went through it the first time and switched it over to the image alts, I set status to true. Then I went down and said if status is false, I'm sorry, is true, then reload. Do a location dot reload true.
So you just cleared state, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
was one way to do it for sure.
and then you can see here, you know, when I click on it, just it reverts back.
Good.
Yeah, that's as far as I got.
Can
I was actually working on this randomize, and I was just thinking about using math.random to go
that's
through.
a good way to do it. Okay, math on random, and it's going to be the length of images, which is what? A list?
Yes,
Okay, so it's going to round up, right? You
right.
math floored it, round down, whatever. Okay, perfect. Now it's going to pick one of the elements in the list as is going to replace the child there with that image, right?
Right. So that's I haven't tested it yet. So I just yeah,
And that
it's
would be for every image, not just one image, right?
right, not just one. Yeah. So I still gotta work on that.
Okay, and that's going to involve some kind of loop probably, right?
Right. Right.
Almost like a dot every or some kind of not even a high order function, just a normal loop,
Right.
replacing every single one to whatever the index that was randomized, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Nice job. Awesome, awesome. Any questions how to attack these problems? They're both very similar. The only difference is one YouTube videos is with iframes and you're going to use URLs. So the randomizing the images that are local are pretty straightforward, right? You have a list with the paths, right?
Right. Right.
How would the YouTube videos be different? It'd be still a list.
Yeah, you can put you can use it as a list. The only thing is you're instead of numbers you're using well,
You can still use numbers, right?
yeah,
The URLs could be strings inside of what?
inside of a dictionary.
Yeah, or a list,
Hmm.
right? You could just index, and there's no
Okay.
different between a path, it's just a string. A URL, it's just a
Mm,
string.
right.
There is no difference, computationally speaking, right?
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. Alrighty. Any questions about that challenge?
Nope. Mhm.
Nope.
Nope. Mhm.
So, all right, good stuff. Uh, so can definitely, I'll try to see if we can spend a couple minutes early. You can spend a little bit more time on that. So, super important thing right now. I actually dropped reading that I think you should all do. It's pretty short. It's not very long. In Hotel Evening and Weekend Questions, it's called the T-shaped engineer, and it talks about being a generalist of a lot of things and then ultimately specializing in something. And right now, you're very new to your development career, but ultimately, you want to be a T-shaped engineer. You want to have a little bit of understanding, a kind of a breadth of understanding about as many things as you possibly can in software development, right? But then you ultimately how you get paid is being a specialist in something. Right now, I think it's important that you all focus on trying to learn as much as you can, see what you like, what you don't like. Maybe you don't like front end, maybe you don't like APIs, maybe you like styling web pages, maybe you end up going into UX. We don't know yet. But right now, it's really important that you dabble and kind of try out a bunch of different things and see what kind of suits you. By the end of the course, you have a decent idea of what you like and what you kind of don't like. But here's the problem. It almost doesn't matter what you kind of like or don't like for your first and second tech jobs, typically, right? Because your favorite stack's going to be whoever's interviewing you, right? That's going to be your favorite at the moment. Make sense? All right, so I recommend everyone read that. It's a fairly short read, maybe 10 minutes. It doesn't take long, but it kind of gives you an insight into like what kind of an engineer you ultimately want to become and the engineer that ultimately gets paid. Um, so take a shot at that. I am going to go over a little bit of CSS. Because I got into a question with Nicole that I think is important. So I'm just going to go over this and then we can wrap up. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Alrighty. So this is a little bit of CSS, and CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And in order to grab an element from the DOM, I always recommend use query selector instead of get element by ID or get element by HTML or any of the other ones. Why do I always suggest you use query selector? Is because it's the most versatile of all of them, right? You can put a dot to signify a class. You can put a sharp sign to signal an ID, and it's just a lot more versatile, right? It's like in Python when people do a normal for loop or a for I in range loop. A for I in range loop in Python can do everything, whereas the for I in X or list Can do most things, but if you needed to pull out the index, then you'd have to do another inner loop with index, right? Far less efficient. Just do for I in range, right? Kind of in the same vein, right? Always use query selector. Make sense? Just more versatile. All right, so you grab an element by, by element. A lot of the times you're not going to grab an HTML element by element. Why is that? You typically don't want to grab an H2 by H2. Why? To style it or to add something to it, an event listener, because there's typically a lot of H2s on a page, right? Or H3s, right? So typically you don't do that. We can do it right now because our, code is 3, 4, 5 lines long, right? But on a typical web page, you're never going to see that. Typically you're going to see classes, right? Classes and rarely IDs. And I'm about to get into the reason for this. Okay, so you know how to grab elements by, the kind of element, H1, H2, right? You know how to grab elements by classes, and you know how to grab elements by ID. So let's talk about specificity. IDs and classes are a way of selecting distinct elements so you can style them. Look at top left-hand corner, right? You have a section, right, in your HTML, and inside the section, you have 2 paragraphs, right? Yes?
Yes.
And then your CSS, it says, sharp sign, zebra, colored red. It's going to color the second paragraph of Hello World red, right? And look at the bottom one. What is the bottom one going to do? There's 3 paragraphs inside a section. Stop robot. What is this going to do?
It's going to color it's going to color the bottom 2 P tags red.
Yeah, and this is how you start layering styles onto a web page, right? You give things that you want colored or styled in a similar vein, right? The same class. And now you just grab the second and third paragraph because they have the class robot, right? And you colored them red. That's why it makes no sense just to grab elements by H1 or H2 or H3. There might be more than one H2 or H3 on a web page. Also, which one are you specifically talking about? Are you only talking about 2 of the 3 H2s? How would you do that? You would add a class and then style that class. Make sense? So that's how you identify how to style what. So specificity and the cascade. I told you the CSA stands for cascading style sheets, right? When you get a tag like an H1 or H2, that's just one specificity. It's not technically, I'm taking some creative liberties here. Just think of it as a tag like an H1 or a P tag or a section tag as 1 point. But the minute that you give an HTML element a class, that ups the specificity to 10 points. If you give anything an ID and you style something by ID, is 100 points, right? And if you use a bang important or inline styles, this is the reason why we don't do it. It's 1,000 points of specificity. And as you write your CSS file is going to get very long, and you're not going to be able to overwrite your previous styles if you gave a bunch of IDs out. Right? So remember, specificity matters as you write your CSS file. Elements further down your file will overwrite previous elements only if they're greater or equal to in specificity. So the general rule of thumb is use as few IDs as possible. Never use bang important for anything. Use as few IDs and style everything simply with tags and classes, and that's it. That's going to be much easier to manage because as your application grows and your CSS files grow, right, it's going to be really hard, right, to style one-off elements, right, if you added a bunch of IDs. Because they're going to have to be adding multiple IDs to get more specificity points to override something, right? It's possible that an article has 12 paragraphs, right? And 3 of those paragraphs are italics, but then that group overlaps with 5 other paragraphs that are all bolded, but only one of them is italics, bolded, and yellow. Does that make sense? Think about it. Go ahead, Art.
I'm a little fuzzy on something we talked about yesterday, where it was about. I thought it was like adding a class within a class, and that would actually increase it. It would
Yeah.
just double the points.
Yep.
Can you explain why we would do that? And
You see this right here? Like here, I just have zebra and robot. But I could have, if I needed to overwrite something and it wasn't the right number of specificity points. That's why you always have to be really careful with IDs because they're 100 points and it's going to be hard to overwrite. But let's say I had right here, robot, it's a class. That's 10 points, right? But if I needed one of those pairs to be slightly different further down the sheet, I could do section in front of this robot, right? To give it one more point, in which case it will overwrite. I could even use two classes. This could be, sorry, I could have given this two classes, right? You don't see it here, but this could have been, oh, anyone ever watched the movie Wild Robot? If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's so good. I could have named it class Wild Robot. And if I use both of those classes, that's 20 points. So yes, they stack. Now, ultimately, unless you're a front-end dev, you won't have to deal with this so much. But if you end up as a front-end dev, right, this will become important. And this is really important. Just this picture is like from Google or something. This is from highest to lowest specificity. Inline styles, never use them. IDs, use them incredibly sparingly because they're 100 points. Right, classes, this is what you're going to style most of your web pages with, just classes. And you're going to layer classes on top of classes. There were 10s and then elements. Like, for example, let's say your web page only has one H1. Feel free to just grab the H1 since there's only one on a very simple web page, right? Because it's only 1 point, right? The trick is to use as few specificity points as possible while developing your application. Why? Because the CSS page typically tends to grow and a lot of the times very unwieldy in terms of points. And you haven't got into this yet, but remember like a while ago, I talked about managing dependencies in an application where different versions wouldn't work with other versions. When you get a really big CSS file, right, it gets a little like that, right? You're copying, pasting the order, knowing that further down the file it overwrites, but only if it's equal to or greater in terms of specificity, it starts becoming incredibly unmanageable. So following these general rule of thumbs is very, very rarely style with IDs, unless it's like one, maybe two things. You always style with classes and elements. If you follow that rule, you're going to be fine. And that's it. That's all I had about that. I just wanted to answer Nicole's question earlier because I know I did a bad job earlier. Stop share. Any last minute questions, guys, before we wrap up?
I have something that's been bugging me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Remember when you were trying to change the title and it wasn't reacting the way you wanted to?
Yeah.
I think I saw another title tag on top of yours. So
Oh,
maybe,
maybe. I'll look at it.
yeah, and because and there was nothing in between the two title tags, it looked like it was defaulting to giving you just the port number. Was that what it was?
Yeah, like the URL with the port number. Yeah. 127.0.0.1, port 5500.
Okay, so if there
I need to
wasn't,
look at that.
if there was another title tag above yours, that would cause that error.
Probably, yeah. I have to look at it. Also, you have to understand, no one really writes raw HTML. Like you're learning this to kind of understand it conceptually, and all these exercises are actually really important conceptually. And right now, what are we doing? Like, oh, I can show you this last minute thing. Still got 3 minutes or 9 minutes or whatever. Can you see my page? So you can replace the image with the tags. You can randomize it. Pizza in the mountain I was telling you about. And sometimes I click the button and you think nothing changes. No, it just chose the same image because I only have 3, right? So that right there is super, super simple. But if you didn't understand how that worked, it would be really difficult for you to conceptually make some of the changes that I was telling you earlier. Like these are just, dumb little images, but what if you have to localize a language, right? At work for an application that serves, millions of people, right? That becomes really, really important. If you don't know how to pull that information and sub out those template strings and have alternate tags, and sometimes the alternate tags are also localized, right? So your image may be, well, the image is an image in any language, but the alternate text isn't, right? And what special designators do the images have that are accessible, right? Like when you hover over it, right? The sound says, hey, this is a picturesque scene of mountains for people that can't see, right? All that stuff's really important. And all that stuff is hard to kind of wrap your mind around trying to solve some of those problems if you don't understand how it works kind of under the hood. Sorry, that was kind of a long-winded answer. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, guys, have a wonderful day. Definitely read that article that I posted in the questions. I think it will kind of help you out kind of on your journey to being a dev. Have a wonderful night, guys.
You guys do the same. Take care.